Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. This is Perry Clark with you, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I want to welcome you back to another episode, which I hope you're going to enjoy. But first off, we got to remind everyone that this podcast is not a replacement for mental services. You should definitely speak with a therapist or mental health professional in your area to speak about your unique issues. This podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes only. So, where do we begin today? Now, in one of my upcoming podcasts, you're going to be speaking with Monet Goldman, who is a therapist who works around video games. I identify very much as a gamer, but I also identify too as a nerd and a geek, which in our communities sometimes is known as a blurred or a bleak. With that kind of comes because a lot of my interests growing up weren't what some would consider typical. And at the time, I was just more interested in the fantasy, which just made life bearable in multiple different ways. But as I've gotten older, I've come to realize just how much also I had issues with identity. And our guest today is someone who, when I first saw his work, I was very much amazed and hit the follow button, and very much was also grateful that he agreed to come on and talk about this issue, which most people would not think about when it comes to dealing with our mental health. And especially now from the geek and nerd perspective, it would have a little more sense. But when we also bring in the aspect of our racial identities as BIPOC people, it takes a different switch to it. So today we're going to be talking with Demetrius Holt, aka Hellspawn Cosplay. Demetrius Holt has been cosplaying since 2017 and has done a number of characters that were personal to him, from Kratos to Sub-Zero. But Demetrius is best known for his characterization of Afro He-Man, but prefers to cosplay He-Man, which has also inspired the creation of a new He-Man character known as He-Soul, which debuted in April 2020 in the comic books. He also recently completed a Kickstarter to create a PSA aimed at educating Black children via his He-Man cosplay in an animated form, which will be appearing soon on several streaming services. He has interviewed actors and composers for JVS YouTube channel. He's a branded ambassador for Black Heroes Matters and Figure This 3D. Currently is exploring acting. He's been featured in 2 cosplay magazines, Cosplay Zine and Cosplay Alliance magazine, as well as a Men's Health article on his impact within cosplay as a Black male in April 2021. But above all of those things, which he's very accomplished in, he's also the father of a 2-year-old boy by the name of Kawhi, who, as he puts it, if he's making out there trying to make the money to make things matter for his son, but if those things aren't working, he'd rather be with his son. So let's give a big welcome to Demetrius Holt. Welcome to Untying Knots.
Hi. There's a lot there.
Yeah, it was. But you've also been busy. And as we all say on some regards, you got your hustle.
Yeah. This week it's only Tuesday. I can't believe it. The different things I've got working on now is ridiculous as far as just the crunch and the amount of moving parts. So
no doubt. So, well, let's begin with the aspect of how did you find your way into cosplay? And for those who are wondering, cosplay means costume play. So if you've ever been to like any of the conventions, whether it's Star Trek to comic books, some would say it is the folks that are running around in costumes that match those characters from that fandom. But please continue.
Yeah. Okay. I got a divorce back in 2017. My ex-wife and I used to compete in the NPC bodybuilding competitions. And when we got divorced in 2017, I needed to do something different other than that, because that's a that's a team sport. It's if you especially have like, a support system. And once that support system is no longer there, then it's no longer fun and it's kind of lonely. And, you just wanted to, change venues, you don't want to be around the same people that you were when you were married. So, I got into cosplay because I had always been going to comic book conventions, but I never got into costumes while going. And the idea of, if I'm going to do a costume, I'm going to do it, hashtag full ass. Like that's my thing. I'm going to go all the way through with it. So my first cosplay was Kratos. So I shaved my head and, got myself painted all white, and ash and all that stuff. And, I had a good time. Like I didn't know cosplay was a thing. I didn't. I just thought, people just went to costumes, conventions and costume, and that was it. I didn't know there was a whole community of people. But the whole reason why I did Kratos is because I figured, if you know the history of the character, his wife and his daughter's ashes were fastened to his skin by a witch. So the idea of if I went to the convention, did this thing for the first time, and then come home and then wash that ashes off me, or wash those ashes off me, then or the paint, then it would be like my rebirth or me shedding the skin of the past. So I didn't know it was gonna be like that poetic or whatever until someone actually told me like, damn dude, that's kind of deep. I'm like, was it?
And for those interested who are wondering who Kratos is, this is the character from the Sony PlayStation game God of War.
Yep. Then after that, some pictures got out, and I saw some pictures. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I think I can keep doing this. And then a friend of mine who is now, or someone who I was not a friend with first, but her name was Shirley. She reached out and she said, I run a Mortal Kombat group. I was like, oh yeah? She's like, yeah, you should do one of the like characters like Ermac or something. And I'm like, we'll see. And then I started thinking about Sub-Zero, and started doing deep dives into where I can get like the best kind of Sub-Zero costume and stuff like that. And that was like the start of me entering the community because someone like ushered me in, So yeah. And Sub-Zero has been a mainstay of mine for the last 4 years. I've evolved it in various ways. And this year he's mixed with a Power Ranger, Power Coin situation. So, I'm a part of a group called the Combat in the Grid on Instagram. So yeah, like there's 7 of us, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Reptile, Ermac, Smoke, and Noob Saibot. And we're all versions of like Power Rangers as far as the characters go.
So definitely something for those to check out to see this blend of these two different fandoms and genres. And then you eventually, at some point in this, created or put yourself into the He-Man outfit, which, and if I can, I'm probably going to try and use that particular image because that was the first one I know I saw, which was you in that He-Man outfit with the fro. And it's just like, that just made me stop way more than any of the other ones. Because, I mean, there's any number of guys running around doing He-Man. But the fact this is He-Man with this fro. I had to stop, and it's just like, yes. Yes.
Yeah. I made that when I was 4. Or at least the idea of it was when I was 4 years old. So, yeah, I've always been a fan of He-Man. Like, I'm 37 years old. I don't, some people are like, I thought you were younger. No, I was born in 84. So, when I grew up, it was all Transformers, He-Man, G.I. Joe, the classic stuff. And honestly, like the character always stuck with me. Whether it be the memes or whether it be just, catching a random episode on YouTube or something. It was just always on my mind. And I did it first at a Baltimore Comic-Con 2018. It was October, so it was a little chilly. But yeah, I just had the idea of it in my mind since I was like 4. So there was no hard. I mean, I did enlist the help from DK Prop Shop, or his name is Dustin Kiska. He's the one who made the armor as far as like the harness, the shield, and the sword, and the belt. And I did the boots and the I don't call it a kilt. I don't want to call it a skirt. I mean, the loincloth. That's what we call it. So yeah, and like the Afro thing, I had a friend a fellow cosplayer. She knew how to style an Afro, and it just came together. I'm just glad that I did it. I was forced. I was not forced. I was faced with the option of not doing it because, I was with a person who was not all that secure with me in cosplay. So, she didn't want me to do that one. She wanted me in Sub-Zero. And it was an argument the entire damn day. And I eventually switched from He-Man into Sub-Zero,
multiple forms over the course of the convention. But you have just hit on at least two major elements of why this also was something that I very much wanted to talk about around the sense of mental health, in the standpoint that this image of this character you've had since 4. This has been an image that has been part of, I would almost say, sustaining you through life, of being able to picture yourself in that aspect of power. One of the things we talk about in therapy at times is the classic statement of, what would so-and-so do? So what was growing up, how many times there's those moments of thinking about, what would your He-Man do in this situation, as we grow up and having that sense running through our heads? So that's the first one, if you want to comment on that, and then I'll go into the second one.
I don't know. Like, how, like, okay, so the base of who I am has always been like the stuff that I used to watch, and also my parents, family and all stuff. That's how it was in the 80s. But, like, I was inundated with a lot of other media growing up, from the Toonami era to, BitTorrents, and then you start to figure out like, what anime is and all that stuff. And, but yeah, like, I've always had this image in the back of my mind. So I've never really had the thought, if I was this character, what would I do? It was always like, what do I need to do? Because I am in this situation and I know I have the ability to do what I need to do. So I'm not sure if that was something that was always in the back of my mind, because, I have the power is that catchphrase that caught all the kids back in the 80s. I mean, I'm also a Dare kid. So,
right.
I don't know. There's a lot of things that stuck.
But equally in that same point, and before I go into the second one, is the fact that you are imagining yourself as this character. And for those who have never seen He-Man, this is a blonde, blue-eyed, white character.
Yeah. I guess, thing is, there's a couple people who would say that I have an ego, a large ego, whatever, that, but then if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, then I would have to have some level of self-confidence to replace myself within the character I was seeing on television. I mean, I'm not trying to.
That's a path to seeing it. I mean, I just put another example. If anyone remembers when the Hunger Games came out, the first movie, as well as the first Thor movie, when they replaced Heimdall, who by Norse myth should be a white person, with Idris Elba, or Rue happened to be which was, everyone had that mental picture of her as a small, white, probably blonde-headed girl, and we see that she is a person of color, and they're upset. And that's that struggle that comes up with, how do we see ourselves in these stories, or can we place ourselves in these stories when, yes, obviously the way the particular writer or the way they have imagined them in the characters is of a certain race. And especially in the aspect of children's TV, how are we picturing ourselves when the predominant image for most, because I'm a child of the 80s as well, we're all white. How often did we have the image of, it's not Chip running around with the Autobots, it's you and I running around with the Autobots? How would we have responded differently? Would we have responded the same way? And this becomes a standpoint of what I'm saying about the effect that it has on our mental image. And as we now recognize just how much that representation matters in the images we're seeing for ourselves.
Yeah. You don't realize that you need it until
Exactly.
it's in your face. So
Exactly.
because I mean, I swear I did not think. I mean, I saw the Snorks, I saw the Smurfs, I saw, you know what I mean? Like I saw every one of those characters as what they were, but not as white characters. You know what I mean? And then I never saw myself as like I might have saw myself, running, alongside Duke and G.I. Joe every now and then, but you know what I mean? But no, in my mind, I was Snake Eyes. So
that leads into my second point, in the standpoint of, again, we never know who Snake Eyes really is. Now, in the comic signs, they do actually take him out, which I think they did make him white to blue-eyed. And I think the most recent G.I. Joe Snake Eyes movie, which has Henry Golding in it, has him being an Asian man. But of course, with that suit on, have no idea.
Nope.
And that gets into that second point, which you were bringing up about the aspect of the person you were with having the issue with you being in He-Man versus in your Sub-Zero costume. Here is this standpoint where, yes, you are attracting a lot of attention for the costume you're on, but also just the fact that you are a very handsome Black man.
Thank you.
And which gets into the issue of the fetishizing that some people have, and that can happen for us, but also just that sense of, here is, again, our representation. If you're in the Sub-Zero outfit, no one knows whether you're white or Black or Asian. So at that point, there is a beauty to that we can put any of ourselves in those particular characters because of who's under the mask. But again, when we don't have those elements, we know one way or another how much of this character represents us.
Yeah, I admit this is, except I kind of regret it now. But the Red Cross, I on the chest, I regret not making it Black. So that's, or just not just having an H on it. I regret that. But everything else about it is unapologetically Black.
Exactly.
And I never made it. I never made it Black. I made it me. That's what I've always seen. So if I'm representing Black as what I know it, then hey, yeah, maybe that's why I identify with like the New Wonder Years, or or any other thing that that represents Black people in a positive light. Like I do identify with that immediately.
Right. And as you said, you were early in your cosplay career. So you have to make that initial connection. That's fine. If you would probably do it now, you probably would make a slightly different figure symbol on that chest.
Yeah. And now I'm starting to see a lot more afros, in cosplay, which wasn't something that I saw when I first got in. So I'm glad that people are taking the torch and running with it. I don't feel it. There's this one guy who I know is really cool. He came out of nowhere with an Afro Lionel. And I was like, man, I was like, it came almost like 6 months after I did my He-Man. I was like, I can appreciate the hustle.
Did he color it red?
Yes, he did.
Oh, but hey, you started that.
Yeah,
by having that image out there. Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah, I'm not mad at all. I appreciate it. And then also there's a couple of other cosplayers that have done things after I did, and I have had to check myself from getting upset because like motherfucker, you could have talked to me about that first, but no idea is yours once you put it on the internet. So the way that I had to like talk to myself about it, just so I wouldn't be like the petulant child that I had in my mind, is like, that's really jealous if someone else is getting attention for something that I gave them the idea for. I was like, well, they're reaching people that I, will not be able to reach. You know what I'm saying? So, it's okay. I've had to grow into that. I've had to grow a lot within cosplay. So I accept that as a mentality of somebody who was a little bit more immature when it comes to the situation. So
So let's before we shift also into the body image aspect of it, why don't we talk a little more about your project from Kickstarter, which is the PSA?
Right. Okay. So at the end of He-Man, at the end of, G.I. Joe, you would have like a small PSA that would tell you, that would basically like teach you a lesson based on what happened in the episode.
Mm-hmm. The moral message.
Right.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I was sitting here thinking, like I have this little boy, and there's nothing on television that really represents his face, and again, it was not something I thought about until I had to think of someone else other than myself. And then like it kind of dawned on me, like, this is something that I know that I can get done because I know the right people. And then if I don't know the right people now, I know who can get me to the right people. So, I hit up Oliver Banks, who is the owner and proprietor and leader of Art Monkey Animation. And it just so happened that he won an Emmy last year. And, it got mailed to him, and he's just like, oh, that kind of a cool guy, So I talked to him. I was like, listen, I don't, because we had never really had a conversation beyond, some comments on Facebook, for like over the last couple of years. And I didn't know what he did until I saw some of his work, like maybe like 4 or 5 months prior. And then also like he did a sticker for me. Like he did like an illustration of my He-Man a couple of years ago. So, I talked to him. I was thinking that, I want to do this. I can put together, I can do the Kickstarter situation. I just need to, we just need to talk to people. He was like behind it because he was like, shoot, he has his own projects that he wants to get off the ground. And I told him like, look, how about this? If we get a good amount of money to fund these PSAs, because he told me it was going to be $1,000 per 30 seconds of animation. I was like, all right, so let's get a good 5 of these things done. If we raise a good enough money for it, then let's fund your project, and which is Imagine Max. That's Imagine Max? Yes. Imagine Max. And let's see if we can get some episodes put onto a streaming service. Just so happens he's best friends with a guy who owns a streaming service that is accessible via Roku TV and Amazon Fire. So, it's called Always Press Record Television. And so we started this group chat between myself, Oliver, and Tre'Vius Lawson, and also Richard Sutton. Richard Sutton is my man at arms. And he and I have been talking about doing like maybe kids' books, something with our images, because we did the Afropunk panel last year because everything was virtual. And when we did that panel, it was to talk about why we're approaching entities like Mattel and Hasbro, because they are the first entities to touch our children, when it comes to influence. So we can get them to have more and more, Black faces in their media. Then maybe those kids who are watching that stuff will grow up to be, the police officers or the judges or whatnot, and they'll be a little slower on the trigger, a little bit more lenient on the sentences because they're used to seeing Black faces. So Richard, Oliver, and Tre'Vius and myself were in this group chat basically coming up with ideas on how to present, the Kickstarter and the PSA and stuff. And then I looped in my friend Jason Richardson from J1Con, and he had done a Kickstarter for his VT Heroes, which I'm also a cosplayer for. I'm VT White, by the way. But anyways, I asked him for his advice on how to get the Kickstarter to be successful as possible, and he told me I needed to start a month in advance before it actually launched. So I spent all of July letting people know that this was going to be a thing. And that's when Oliver came up with a few images, and then we came up with a couple memes, and it got into the people's, it got into their minds. And so by the time the Kickstarter launched on August 1st, we got funded in 3 hours, So that 10,000, I just wanted $1,000. I just wanted to do just the one PSA, and then, got the advice to keep the number keep the number low so that we can, make sure that we get funded, because with Kickstarter, if you don't get all the money, then you get none of the money.
Right.
So we got funded in 3 hours, and the goal was only $1,000. But by the end of the Kickstarter, we ended up with $20,155. So with all the vendors that I had, I've had either make things of me or I've purchased things from them. We paid them out and we got I think a total of about $13,000. So, that's a good enough money to get all of his projects started. And the goal right now is to get this first one done. I've already written the script for it. He's getting ready. He started the storyboarding process for it. But you want to get it out, and we want to get as many eyes on it as possible, so that when we do start moving towards the last 4 or 5 of them, people will be expecting them. And then we might get some more funding, from people who can see what we're capable of. And then we will be able to create a Saturday morning cartoon block on Always Press Record Television. Because not only are we talking about Oliver Banks's his IP, we're talking about 5 different comic book companies that are all Black owned that I've talked to, who are just waiting for us to be done so that they can jump in. And then hopefully they can get the funding, because we've got the platform, we've got the numbers, it's just, and we got the talent. So it's just about getting the money.
Well, I'm happy to say that some of that money was mine too, because I helped put some money into the Kickstarter, which is also what allowed me to make the contact with you for this. Because when it suddenly clicked on me after, because I'd gotten my my Kickstarter reward, and it's like, wait a minute, I've got a direct line via this to contact you. And I had been thinking about, as I started this podcast, how was I going to try and contact you? I knew I was following you on IG, and then it's like, wait a minute, this works. Which is when I sent the request and the idea to you.
See, I'm not that cosplayer that does not respond to messages. There's a lot of people out there, for some odd reason, like, listen, you're only Instagram famous. Like, just we saw it yesterday. If Instagram and Facebook go away, who the fuck are you? I mean, so don't get that big of a head where you think that just because you have a couple 100,000 followers that you're not, you're too good to just say hi to somebody. All right. But yeah, like I'm never going to be that type of person, because my dad would be the first one to humble me. You just don't do that to people.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place for us to take a break. Okay. So we're going to hang on there for just a few moments. We're going to go step away for the break, and we're going to come back and talk more with Demetrius here on Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it, so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingnotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingnotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. We're here chatting with Demetrius Holt, a.k.a. Hellspawn Cosplay, a cosplayer who created the Afro He-Man, or as many of us know, He-Man, in the geek and nerd space. So one of the other reasons I definitely wanted to talk about with you, as you had been very candid on your IG, talking about the toll it also takes doing that physical sculpting to be able to carry off these characters, which are, let's be frank, some cases well outside of normal human proportions, depending on how the toys are made or how they're being drawn. and the sense of what that takes and affects you as a man, when you're not being these characters. And I think some of that got touched on with what you were saying earlier about how the partner you were with at that time had the issue with your He-Man versus your Sub-Zero form.
Yeah. So you don't know that you have something until you see other people say that they have it, and then you start researching it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of body dysmorphia, I just thought that I needed to look a certain way for women.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna bullshit you, but when I was growing up, like the first thing I remember about what I would need to do in order to attract a woman was make sure that my teeth were brushed.
Mm-hmm.
My brother, that was also something else that my brother was like, he would say that you don't ever want to smoke cigarettes or anything because it'll turn your teeth yellow. And you like girls, right? I'm like, yeah. So that was one thing that stuck in my mind. And then I remember I started getting acne at one point, and my brother told me, he's like, because you're drinking all that soda. If you don't want to have problems, attracting women, stop drinking soda. So I stopped drinking soda for like 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when it came to, looking fit or being fit, it really was to just be set apart from the rest of the pack in case, I attracted a woman or something. And as far as the bodybuilding part of all of this, I got into bodybuilding because my ex-wife and I weren't working on a level that I wanted to work. It was something that we had talked about in pre-marriage counseling, and she didn't hold up her end on that. So, I started thinking of different ways to attract her. And it was right after our wedding where she started bodybuilding. She started getting, because she wanted to get fit for her wedding dress. And there was a gym in Columbia, Maryland called the Coliseum. And, everyone around there looks like they're 3 weeks out, from a show, 6-8 packs, don't matter, they got it. And she was there every Sunday morning for posing practice. And I had not gone because, that's her thing. The only thing, because I was the one who was cooking at the house. So I just cooked, and I went to the gym with her, whatever, wasn't a big deal. But when we weren't working on a level that I wanted us to work, I started thinking of different things that I could do to change that. And maybe there was a part of me that felt like I needed to have a 6-pack in order to attract my wife. So that's when I jumped into bodybuilding with her. And, it didn't change. But that's why I got into it. And I just stayed in it because it made me feel like I was on a level to compete with anybody. When you're walking around a building called the Coliseum, or when you're on a stage and you are spray painted with the
spray tan
stuff, right?
Yeah, the spray tan.
Yeah. And then you've been working out, you've been dieting, and then you finally get a chance to show out. You feel like you're walking with other gods. You know what I mean? So it's definitely an ego trip. It's definitely something that that's a camaraderie thing, because all of us. I mean, I've got videos on Facebook where we were eating. It was a food eating contest. With me and the rest of the team. And we're just. I mean, I was the only physique guy where there was actually the bodybuilding category, and then the power lifters, and so it was that group mentality was so I mean, even the women were all on that same level, and it was great. So yeah, there's a level of ego that goes along with your body because it's yours, and that it's attractive, and whatever. So when you have to, or when you find yourself in a position where you're not able to work out, and you start getting soft, you start getting start getting smaller and start getting a little flab in places, you write it off in your mind as, oh, I'm just bulking. You know, I'm just eating everything I need to eat so I can get bigger, get big season. And then the pandemic hit and you can't get that weight off.
Well, you don't have the same access to the equipment that you use to get that weight off as well.
No, you don't. And then I don't believe in weights at home because it's just clutter. You know, it's just, and I don't like a whole lot of clutter. So the idea of me just expanding and losing my wind, you know, and then just feeling flabby, it really did make me feel like I was not worthy to really be outside, you know. And like, because by this time the pandemic hit, I've been He-Man for what, damn near 3 years. So you know, like, how can He-Man be chubby, especially when he presented himself to be something not chubby? And then I don't want to body shame anybody. That whole, you can't really talk about it without offending somebody. You know what I mean? So it's like, you know, if I'm going to talk about this because I need to talk about it, because I need to get it off my chest and let folks know that, you know, this shit is fake, man. Like, you know, having the abs all the time, you know, like that's not something that is realistic 24/7, unless that's all you do for your life. And yeah, it's just really hard to not feel like I have an event at the end of this month. I have to be He-Man, and I am struggling because I was sick for 3 weeks. Like, I caught my son's cold, and it took me down, and I lost 13 pounds in like 2 or 3 weeks, and it just, now I am fighting to try to gain weight so I can add muscle that I lost. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm worried about the end of the month, because I'm flying in Claude X Cosplay and Michael Greatness Johnson. You know, one is a seasoned veteran bodybuilder who, you know, he looks like he's 3 weeks out, and then the other one is a 20-something, you know, competitor and ninja warrior, and teaches, you know, children, you know, strength training. Yeah. And so he's always big, you know what I mean? So I'm just like, I'm the one that's getting these people here, and my name is on the banner, and I'm not up to snuff. Like, I'm looking at this magazine cover, and I just know that I don't look like that right now, and it's bothering me. I don't know what to say after that.
No, and that's very much honest that it is. And I would say that's one of the things that when we talk about the idea of the body image shaming, body dysmorphia, it's easier to be seen when we talk about women and the idea of being either the model thin or size 0. But when it comes to men, most people don't even think about that we have that same issue. In this case, can we look like we did when 3 years ago, before this pandemic? The stress around trying to maintain that image. I know when we were sort of planning this, I mentioned there was a documentary. I couldn't remember what the title was when I did a little research. It's called Quest of the Muscle Nerd, which talked about the start of a physique cosplay muscle show that came at Dragon Con, I believe, and also around 2017. It is on both Amazon and YouTube if people are looking for it. And it's, I mean, interesting experience that they talk about there. But again, as a therapist also, as I'm listening to them talk about their experiences, their self-identity, I can hear the stuff that there's the self-esteem issues that are coming up in there. And they're subtle, but again, you don't know what you're listening for. And this sense of this body image that for many of us takes a lot of dedication to get to, but some of us will never have. And we see ourselves as less because of that. And that too, much like what we're talking about, the representation of our skin and ourselves in it, also comes up too about what is the idealized body we see when we are looking at these things. The usually toned, fitness, or extremely muscular characters. And how does that also play as men with our sense of who we are?
There's that old meme where it's got Barbie and He-Man standing next to one another. And the Barbie one is like, women have to live up to this sense of like, this is what women are supposed to look like. And like men will never understand it. And then the idea is like, this is He-Man, you know what I mean? Like, so he has to, like, that's what men of this generation have grown up in the back of their minds with, that image, So I can't speak for every man out there. No. The only one I can speak of is for myself. And the pressure of making sure that I look like a certain way for a character is only coming now when has not been a natural situation for me to be in the gym and where I have been ill, and I'm not sick often. Like I get sick like maybe once every 6 or 7 years. And this time it just happened in the very, very bad timing. And, like I'm in between the time that I have with my son and the time I get home from work, because sometimes I don't get home from work until like 9, and my gym closes at 10. So I'm trying to get at least 10 to 15 minutes of cardio in and try to lift a little bit and then try to sleep. And then when you can't sleep because you're worried about so many other things, it goes a lot.
Yeah, that is. And there's that illusion that we all struggle with, that you've got it going on, but in reality, you're just as human as the rest of us. And you're struggling and need the help just as much as everyone else does.
Yeah, well, if I don't get it done, it won't get done. So I got to do it.
And you do what you can. But at the core of that, as you said, time with your son, which is also very important and is part of what inspired you to do this PSA. And that is, I'll be frank, you have the power.
Yeah, well, there's so much more that's going on. And
but it's more than wielding a sword.
Yeah.
Much more than wielding a sword or having that image. With everything that you are creating with this project, that's why I say you have the power.
It's a team effort. It can't be done by one person. So, I'm glad I got Oliver and Treveus and Richard, Nikki, and Isan. We have a pretty good team of folks that are getting it done. And because they know how important it is for everyone else too. So, it's not all on me, and I know that I have great people around me. So, this is something for everybody, and everyone's going to be able to benefit from it.
And that's one of your PSAs right there.
Well,
so
I've got. Well, I don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was about to say, why don't we go ahead and get into the myths and reality as well? Because I think this is a nice segue into the standpoint of you, with also what you've been candid on IG. What do you think are one of the myths that we deal with as BIPOC people when it comes to our mental health, and especially as a man,
that we can get through it by ourselves without having to talk about it? That's a huge myth. Man, I don't know. You see, I started therapy at the beginning of this year, because there's a lot of things that have happened over the last couple of years within cosplay. And, and also, the fact that I have this little boy, and I'm not with his mother. So there's that issue altogether. The idea of having someone that is unbiased and not a part of any circle that I'm a part of, because I've had that whole idea thing, or I've had a whole thing where, people have betrayed my trust, where I thought I could vent to them and then bad things happen because I told the wrong person. So the idea of having a therapist was one of necessity. So, at first I was doing every week, and then we just went to, at the beginning of at the beginning of September, we went to every other week. So, I want to say that's like some level of progress, some level of self-awareness, and being able to take some responsibility for my own actions. And then also realizing what's not my fault and what's not within my control. But the biggest thing that I've been learning about myself is that my anger and my frustrations don't have to control me as much as they have. I can now ask myself reasonable questions about a situation to prevent myself from thinking of something more negative than what was actually the case. And, that eases some of the struggles that I have. But, you can only do but so much.
And that's when we look to the team, which in many cases, just to use what we're talking about, as a therapist, I become man at arms.
Yeah.
I become Tila. I become Cringer. And I'm still blanking on a couple of the others. Roboto. If we're sticking with the whole He-Man metaphor, and then that sometimes you need one of us to step in to be one of those characters, to be part of that team.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's hard asking for help. Because, you're supposed to be the one that has it all together, and when you don't really have an explanation as to why. So it's really difficult the thing is, I don't come up with excuses. I come up with reasons. My parents always taught me to, before I came to them for a problem, to have 3 solutions to the problem. So therefore, if I ever came to them, that means I actually attempted to work at it. And now when people ask me why something didn't work out, it's really hard to admit that I failed somewhere. But then I fail all the time. And it's just not everyone knows about it.
Yeah. Which is one of the unrealized truths of any of the superheroes we're seeing. Because, just to be frank, if you look at any of the superhero shows that are on now, even the movies we've just recently had, none of these heroes are ever actually alone in doing any of these things.
No.
They have a support team.
Yeah, there's always someone to, like, there's a man in a chair, or, a man in a van type deal.
Which is the thing, which is that aspect that a hero is not just one individual. It is a group. It is a team. Yeah. Some might bear a certain more weight than others. Some might be the public face, but there is a team behind that person helping them do this.
I think whenever you forget the team, you've lost everything. Because now you're out there by yourself, and being out there by yourself is lonely as shit. And there's no one else out there to like, not just like, give you a helping hand, but to lean on when things do go bad, so yeah, you can't ever forget the team.
Well, I think on that note, we should go ahead and wrap up. So are there any other things you want to announce, or other ways that people can follow you and continue to help cheer you on and remind you do have that power?
Well, when this will release on the 18th, right?
Yeah, I'm setting it for the 18th as the point. This will be episode number 3.
Episode number 3. Okay, so on October 30th, if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, Northeast DC, look up the Harvest Fest 2021. I'll be there hosting it with several other cosplayers from Philadelphia, Texas, and Georgia, and it should be a good time. It's all there's I think they're playing Candyman at the end of the movie. At the end of the night. But yeah, it's going to be there's a haunted hayride and a trunk or treat, other stuff like that. This also the 22nd to the 23rd. No, I'm sorry, October 23rd to 24th is Afro Comic Con, which is a hybrid convention that is both in person and virtual. I'm one of the judges and also one of the spokespeople for the convention, but I'm one of the judges for the cosplay contest. So if you actually go to my Instagram of Hellspawn cosplay, Hellspawn_cosplay, you'll see some of the posts that I have that has all of the information on there, all the links on there. There's a couple other things that I can't really talk about yet because they haven't been released yet, and I am anxiously waiting for them to come out because those are supposed to be really fantastic projects.
Maybe we can have you on another occasion. You can talk about that too.
Yeah. And also just hang out and wait for the PSAs. We are, we're working on the first one. I've got the script done for that one and the audio is done for that one as well. Actually, I could play the audio for that one now if you don't mind.
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time but you know what we do? Let's plan an episode 2.
Okay.
And we do that.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And people, mental health is super important and you need to take the time to have a little bit of self-care. Okay.
Demetrius, I thank you as well. And look forward to our episode 2 of this, or shall we say part 2. And this is, my name is Perry Clark. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. This is my podcast, Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered, here on the Voice America Network. So stay tuned for our next episode in 2 weeks. Just a little addendum to the end of the episode. Unfortunately, both Demetrius and I had to run because we had both other meetings and appointments that we needed to get to. But he was able to send me the audio that he was talking about. And so I've asked that it be put on to the end here so you get a chance to hear it. Now, this is a rough audio. They are still working on getting it more polished. But just so you can hear, this is the audio for one of the first PSAs, public service announcements, that are being connected with their He-Man program. So please enjoy and share.
There are many faces to a hero. One's worthiness is not found in shades or features, but their actions in life.
The world is an ever-changing landscape, and we want you to know that heroes that look like you exist. They are working to make tomorrow a better place for you. Be strong and at peace with the idea that you are the future.
You are the new Black heroes to lead the way.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.